MoneroCon with the one and only Fluffypony, Riccardo Spagni, and so we're having a good time here. And so where's Monero at, Fluffy, right now? What do you see? What are the biggest challenges right now Monero's facing? And maybe you can expound a little bit on RandomX and where that's at. Yeah.
Sure. So Monero is, its main claim to fame and its main intention and purpose is to be privacy enhancing. And I think that the biggest challenge Monero faces is that I fear that people have a general apathy towards privacy, and it's not something that we can control or really even influence, but that's the risk, that people might just not really care about giving all their information to Facebook as long as they can still play Farmville. And that's really the biggest risk. More than any technical risk is just people not caring enough about privacy. I think that one saving grace is that companies like Apple are starting to treat privacy very seriously. They're starting to make privacy cool. And my hope is that over time, as Apple start to push things like privacy being the natural state of being and a basic human right, that people will eventually realize that they're using services and tools that are not private, and then they will go out and search for things that are private, and they'll come across things like Monero. So, it's 2019. Virtually everyone has been the subject of some data leak and some hack. And I think people are slowly starting to wake up. I just hope they wake up fast enough. In terms of stuff like RandomX, Monero has always tried to enable people to use Monero easily and be as egalitarian as possible, and that means on the mining side as well. We sort of want people to be able to mine Monero easily. I don't know how feasible it is to do that forever, but at least for the foreseeable future, it's an aim and a desire and a stated goal. And RandomX is one of the ways that we're trying to achieve that. So RandomX makes it more feasible to mine Monero on a computer, and you don't need specialized hardware like an ASIC. It's possible that ASICs will be created for RandomX, we don't know, but there's a reasonable level of confidence that it'll be able to survive, it'll be so difficult for an ASIC to be created that there will never be one that exists.
Huh. So this is a way to provide options within the market, while at the same time achieving a means to stay as decentralized as possible, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say that again, we're not sure how things will play out, and it might be that later on we realize it was futile and we need to embrace ASICs. But for now, the community wants to move in a way that eschews ASICs and that rather embraces this more egalitarian approach to mining.
Right. So would it be safe to say that the Monero community is starting to move more towards seeing mining as a competitive dynamic or of a meritocracy where you're allowing the market to decide? Is this what we're going to, or we're giving the market more of a free flow to decide in the market itself how miners desire to interact? Is this where we're going?
Yeah, I think that there's consensus is hard in general, but you've got to sort of feel out the user base and the audience and the crowd and the developers and all of that, and we all have to sort of read each other and go, what is the broad consensus? We're never going to please everyone, but generally speaking, this is what the community wants to do, and I think it makes sense for now. I think it largely makes sense for the direction the community wants to go in. I don't know how sustainable it is, but so far it seems to be working, and we'll see how it goes.
Oh, when you hear the phrase central planning for the sake of decentralization, what comes to mind?
Yeah, so that's one of the risks, right? That you end up going, we want to reject ASICs because of fears of centralization. So what we're going to do is end up with like a central cabal of developers who are making all these decisions in secret in order to not give ASIC manufacturers a heads up. And so basically what you're doing is, out of fear of the one, you're creating another centralization risk, and that's really the trade-off. It's sort of okay to lean in that direction, but the minute you actually go in that direction, then it's deeply dangerous territory. Not only from a sort of risk perspective in terms of being shut down, but from a regulatory perspective, being held accountable for a piece of software or how a piece of software is used is an exceptionally dangerous situation to be put in. So that's why I've always said, stay away from centralizing risks like that as much as possible, and I've always encouraged other developers to do the same, because the minute it's overly centralized, you put yourself personally at risk even.
Yeah, this is a big issue that we are dealing with all of crypto, and Monero stands as a project that seems to have a clear North Star. And it's almost like when you try to define consensus or where you're headed towards as a community and for your project, Monero has its definition extremely well defined. I would say it's a project that is the most well defined. So there's little almost argument amongst the community as to where this is going, but rather it's just how to best implement it. And so what it seems as if from what you're telling us is that you're now starting to swing the pendulum on the other direction in terms of its crypto governance, where you're moving from an emphasis on decentralization and opening yourself up to market competition.
Yeah.
And do you ever see a future where you just completely just unleash it and just let the market handle it and do it, will we ever get there? Will we ever get there to we just whatever miners decide, and that's what we're going to just allow, whatever, since the reason behind that would be a miner's incentive is to secure the network, therefore the miner would know best what is best for themselves in seeking profit, and they're not going to do anything that goes against the community, right? It's a chicken and egg thing. I don't know the answer, Fluffy,
so I think that this only works because everyone's kept in check. So as a community, we have to make sure that miners will still get profitable. Miners have to play by the rules because they're kept in check by the community who are running nodes, and those nodes will reject their blocks if they try and do something that is outside of the bounds of those rules. So everyone keeps each other in check, and I think it's a very delicate balance, and it's a very careful game that needs to be played. If one of those sides, and there's more than just two, but if one of those sides starts to exert more influence or more power than they should have, then everything tilts in that direction, and that's an incredibly dangerous place to be in. And on all sides, miners are ultimately profit-driven. So, as an example of something that might happen, if we said, okay, cool, we believe miners are going to do what's in the best interest of the network, we're going to let miners make all the decisions, then you might end up with a scenario where miners say, well, what we think we should have is a bigger block reward. We should change the emission curve because that's good for securing the network. And where the miners, we've made the decision, off we go. Where, it's what's good for securing the network from the miner's perspective as profit-seeking individuals is not necessarily what's good for the network from an economic perspective. So everyone needs to be kept in check, and they have to. These forces need to push against each other to keep things in check, and that means sometimes there's a little bit of tussling and a little bit of fighting, but that's fine because ultimately we end up with something that's stronger. People have to defend their decisions publicly. And ultimately, we end up with something that's significantly stronger.
That's what's interesting about Monero is that you have to defend your position publicly, but as a miner, in Monero especially, you don't have to be public, right? Yeah. So you find yourself in a conundrum that what you say does make sense, and there's this temptation from an entrepreneurial, from an investor perspective, to see a future where, or I actually even see an actualization right now in the present moment where incentives are aligned, where the desire of the miner is exactly in line with what is best for the economy, for the Monero economy itself. And so so the question that I have here is are there any voices within the community that trust mining completely, and actually would push for just for that complete trust in the incentive structure, in the market-driven action of the miner itself. Because when I think of mining, I think of it as as the least liquid asset within Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Within crypto, within Monero, and so it's almost as if the miners have the most to lose, and that, I don't know, that sometimes makes a lot of people to want to trust the miners more. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that the biggest challenge there is it's immensely difficult to trust miners because they're well incentivized, but there are disincentives that exist as well.
Okay.
And we don't always realize that. So as an example, a miner whose equipment is coming towards the end of its life, and he knows that it's not going to be worth anything, like pretty much after this point. If difficulty continues, he's not even really going to be able to mine past that particular point. He might go, okay, I've got one lost player. I have a sufficient hash rate to be able to attack the network and to get out with a much bigger pot than if I just, mine to the end of its life and walk away with a bunch of dead equipment. So, there are weird disincentives that exist. And sometimes we don't think about them because we tend to think only in positives. We tend to think of people behaving well.
Right.
And it's difficult to have adversarial thinking. But within the Monero development community, we've created a culture of adversarial thinking. We're constantly thinking of situations that could exist where people can misbehave, where mining equipment could be rented out to someone who wants to attack the network. So we can't always assume that miners are going to be well behaved. We can't always assume that anyone's going to be well behaved. We have to assume that everyone's out to get us, everyone's out to attack each other, and that's the situation where it works the best, where you don't have to trust that someone's going to work in your best interests. The minute you have to rely on the hope that a particular party is going to work in your best interests, you're in a dangerous situation. So that's really where we're at. We've got this system that just works, and it works well, and I don't think I haven't come across anyone who's a big proponent of changing that and letting any particular group run amok.
Yeah, I think that wouldn't even make sense for Monero, because Monero's game theory is revolves around protecting the individual, and if you protect the individual, you have to, in a sense, be very discerning into. Yeah, you have to, in a sense, guide it as a community. It's not like it's not to be money for the world where you allow everyone to participate, because that would just invite everyone to participate who don't want individual privacy and anonymity.
No, absolutely, and I think that there's always going to be a barrier to entry for something like Monero. Not necessarily from a technical point of view, but in terms of like OPSEC and understanding how to use Monero in the most private way. These are all things that require user education, and a lot of people will take a look at it and they will, realize that it requires a little bit more thinking and a little bit more educating of yourself in order to use it, and they'll walk away and they'll be like, no thanks, I'd rather use paper, and that's fine. But there's always going to exist a group of people who have such a strong desire for privacy, or such a strong need for privacy, that they're able to overcome those barriers, overcome that friction, educate themselves and use Monero.
Fluffy, what do you think of right now these proposals, or these actually executions of the FATF and the AMDL5? Do you foresee a future then where the liquidity within the crypto market will be divided between those who prefer their privacy versus liquidity in KYC/AML exchanges?
Yeah, look, I mean, I know that right now we live in a world where those two are mutually exclusive, where the greatest liquidity comes with strings attached. And sort of like on the more pro-privacy side of the spectrum, if you're using something like Bisq, Bisq is fantastic but very low liquidity.
Right.
And then if you're using an exchange, then KYC, AML, whatever, but high liquidity. I don't know how long that mutual exclusivity will exist, though. I think that as decentralized exchange tools and systems become more powerful, more adept, then eventually we'll end up in a world where you can have both. You can have high liquidity in a private exchange scenario and a decentralized exchange scenario. And that's really where I hope we're going to get over time.
Okay, so if you could please tell us, do we see any hope in that with Tari?
So Tari's aim isn't really to solve that. I mean, there will be a decentralized exchange built into Tari, but the decentralized exchange will be around Tari-enabled assets. I don't really see that providing sufficient external liquidity, but there are definitely other projects that are focused on providing not just non-custodial exchange solutions, but non-custodial and decentralized exchange solutions that can handle high liquidity. And that's, I can't name any off the top of my head that are particularly close to that goal, but they definitely are. There are many that are working towards it, and that's really where my hope lies.
Like Bisq. Yeah. So, we love Bisq. So, okay. And what do you foresee? Like any? I have so many questions for you, but I think we can wrap it up now. Maybe catch up and do another interview later today or tomorrow. Anything else? Any recommendations for anyone coming into Monero? Anything? Where to get started?
Sure. So I think anyone who, if you're a little bit technical and you want to dig into Monero's technical nature just a little bit, there's a really good book, Mastering Monero, which you can get online. You can buy a physical copy as well. There's also Zero to Monero, both of those books are excellent. They're a great way to get started from a more technical perspective. Otherwise, if you're just learning and you want to learn best practices, every Sunday on the Monero subreddit, there's a Skepticism Sunday thread, and you can go in there and you can be skeptical, ask questions, ask the hard questions, and let the community help you understand, so that you can, within yourself, have that full and complete knowledge of what the risks are, how to use Monero most effectively.
Thank you, Fluffypony. Yes, skepticism is very valuable. We value you very much for everything you're doing. Let's catch up and let's have
Perfect.
a part 2 of this when we have a chance. Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Good stuff.
His armpits dripped like a wet sponge. Heart racing. Hard to breathe. Every second, watching the price of Bitcoin plummet made his jaw clench tighter. Should he hodl? Sell? Double down and buy more? And then, when Bitcoin shot up, his uncertainty caused him to hesitate again, costing him thousands in lost profits. In fact, whether cryptocurrencies were rising or falling, he didn't know which way to play. But you don't have to lose like that guy, wishing he could trade like a whale, but knowing he'll always be a sardine. Unless he gets schooled on how to trade crypto like a pro. Jeff Berwick was the first financial analyst to recommend Bitcoin at $3 in 2011. If you had bought $1,000 worth, you would have made almost $6.6 million by 2017, enough money to set you up for life. Then he recommended Ethereum at $2 in 2016. If you listened, $1,000 would have turned into a cool $1,116,895. That's enough for a second home, a trip around the world, and a brand new car, with a few $100,000 left over for whatever you want. But that's not all. Jeff also nailed the timing on Dash and called EOS an early winner at only 50 cents, making his subscribers a fortune. But Jeff will be the first to tell you, the winning picks didn't all come from him. They were precise targets from his top secret group of advisors, a group he's held a vice-like grip on. But for the first time, he's sharing his advisors with a small group of smart investors. Together, these cryptocurrency geniuses have created wins of 4,224%, 124,900%, even 317,900%.